Hi, I'm Carlton, and this is The Serving Effect, where we spotlight everyday heroes who are transforming lives and building a stronger, more connected community. We're going to bring you stories of individuals and organizations who are coming together, loving on people, lifting them up, and encouraging, and showing the power of when we all come together to serve each other. So, whether you're actively serving now, or you need some encouragement to serve, or maybe you just need one practical idea to get you started today, you're in the right place. So today's episode, we have Tim Stevens, a friend of mine, who is known for service and well known in Garner. Thank you for being here, Tim.
Sure, it's much fun.
Tell us a little bit about, there's so many accomplishments, but what I want is that the people who are viewing this to see the person. Where did this come from, the hobbies, kind of how did it evolve to where you are now?
I think I was kind of born to be a writer, uh, and by that I mean a storyteller. I look back at my grandfather and my daddy, and they would sit around, didn't have much TV in those days, and they sit around and tell stories. And so I think it kind of comes through the line of telling stories. And mine manifested itself first in writing. I remember back in school when we get to spelling words, we'd have to write a story using half the spelling words or something. And I would always use all the words, and I would many times write 3 or 4 stories using all the words. I just enjoyed writing and have done that, and that I always thought it was just writing. I worked at the newspaper for 48 years because I enjoyed writing. But then once I retired, and even a little bit before, I realized it was more storytelling than it was anything else. Just uh, uh, you got to have a certain amount of ego to be a writer, because if you write, you want somebody to read it, and therefore it means that you think you have written something worthy of their time, and so there's a little ego involved in that. But just I find out interesting things that are terribly interesting to me, and just feel like other people should know about it.
Now, it says in your bio that you are started your professional writing at 15. What was that experience that began that early in life?
There was a parent in Garner who was calling the Raleigh Times regularly for not having enough coverage of high school sports, of Garner's high school sports. My mother was the editor of the Garner News. So they called my mother and said, "Can you think of anyone who would be willing to cover some Garner games?" And it's worked out. There happened to be someone who lived in her house, who was 15 years old, who was willing to do it. And those, I was 15, so like for away games, I'd have to pay people to carry me to the games because that was the way I could go. And I was a great businessman. I think I was making $4.50 a story, and I'd usually pay somebody $5 to carry me. Uh, but
That means a love of writing right there.
Yes, and so that's kind of how I got started in just covering some of those first games. That's got my foot in the door, and so that was 15. First game I covered was Garner played at Henderson in basketball, and then I just enjoyed it and kept doing it, and uh, was very fortunate. The Raleigh Times uh, had a nice circulation, but it was a good place where you could start and not be really, really good.
I know that most people may not know your dad, but there's a James R. Stevens Award, and so I just want to bring that out that few people have their dad that has an award for long term service
Right.
in their name. So could you tell me some of the influence? Maybe all
Sure.
I remember hearing is that he just loved his community, anything to do with his community, and so some of that influence I'm sure was there.
My mother has told me many times that when she was dating Daddy, she was from Nightdale, and she learned very quickly you could say almost anything to Daddy and everything's fine, but don't ever criticize Garner. He was raised down on Highway 50 on a farm. Uh, Played a lot of baseball, was very good at baseball. He uh, got involved in the town board at Garner. He was very involved in PTA. He would do whatever he could to help the town. The award came about The family had nothing to do with it. Some people in the town wanted to recognize Daddy. At that point, Daddy had served on the town board 20 or 30 years. I don't know. And it had been very active on committees and stuff, and just wanted something to recognize him and also to create an award to recognize people in the community. I used to always say it was the Unhall of Fame. No, the Hall of Unfame, because many of the people who have won the award have not been extremely well known. They were just doing their thing. They were serving meals. They were doing things with no recognition, and this was a way to recognize them. And of course, many of the people have done so many big things that the people already know them, but it was an award that is designed to recognize people who are helping the community in different ways.
I remember reading in one of the narratives, it was you have to understand that the people that deserve the award would never nominate themselves.
Correct.
So they're in the background, they're doing the work, and so people that deserve to get it are not going to put their name in. So it's up to the citizens of Garner who have
That's
watched this. Yes.
And that's the way it's been the whole time.
I hope that the town continues and the chamber continues to promote a long-time service. We want people and businesses to do great things, but we want them to stay.
Well, that's one of the criteria, and it's supposed to be in different ways. It's not just doing one thing. Usually, it's people who are involved in doing many things, and then the long term, because it's designed for long term. Somebody can move in and do some great things for 2 or 3 years. Well, it's really not designed to recognize a like single feat,
Right.
something you did.
Right.
It's more, it's a long-term service.
Right. Well, community is recognizing those that have been here and those who are coming in. So the investment of staying
Right.
was a big thing, a part of not a recognition for something outstanding last year or
Right.
the coming year. It's something. So tell us a little bit about the things that you are in the middle of. There's so many things that I have several pages, and so I just gave up trying to memorize anything about you in the things that you're doing. But I know there's a lot of passion. I've heard you speak several times over the years and the different things that you're in, but there's always a real passion behind what you're accomplishing, and because people need to know the education that comes in. I think I read that you were one of the first ones to talk about concussions in high school football.
On the national level.
Yes, on the
I was
national.
very lucky that Kevin Goosewitz was at the University of North Carolina, and I was in the office, and a call came from Chapel Hill, and they were talking about concussions and said, we've got one of the leading experts in concussions here, and it was Kevin Goosewitz. And so I got started with him, and before it was a topic on the national level, we were doing lots and lots of stories, and he helped get me in touch with concussion experts all over the country, and a couple of cases internationally. And we're talking about it. And his big point, his sons played football. We need to work and see how safe we can make it and what's causing the concussions. And the big thing was the brain damage that showed up, later.
Right.
In all the stories that we've heard, tragic stories, people commit suicide and this kind of stuff in their later years, or being totally dysfunctional. I learned quickly, I covered high schools mostly, that primarily you want me to write about your school. I understand that. But at one point, I had 242 schools that were playing up to 42 sports each. So it was impossible. But if I wrote a story that was about high school athletics or a problem that was going on, everybody would read it. And of course, it goes back to the quest for readers. I used to think finding somebody who read something that I'd written was like finding a unicorn. This is rare. Wow. But and so we did those concussions, things that were later became topics, and we tried to be out and ahead of them, and I enjoyed that a great deal. One of the other things I did that was kind of cool. North Carolina did not have any state records for high school athletics, and just who was the guy that rushed for the most yards ever? And so, well, I don't know. So I took one summer and researched it, and we started a record book, and knowing that essentially everything I find is going to be wrong, but that's how you find what's right.
Okay.
Because somebody says, I say this guy rushed for a state record, 3,075 yards that year. And then somebody said, well, so and so did 4,000. Great. You know, and we said that in the book. These are probably wrong. But you don't know, unless somebody tells us and proves to us. That was the other part. We had to have something in writing from a newspaper or something. And so that was something I enjoyed. That was, but it was just me being curious. And I think that's one of the things I am. Uh, and then I wrote for years, and I wrote different things. So when I retired, I worked there 48 years, and it was time. The paper was changing. I wasn't interested in changing with it, uh, and so I started writing plays. I love the theater. The Everybody else's hobby, or many people's hobby, is sports. Sports is work. If I go to a game, it's like something clicks, and I go and we were told never cheer. You're there. You're a fly on the wall. You don't. Number one, people say, "Who do you want to win?" Well, if it's a local team in high school, you want to win. But like colleges, I was paid to be impartial. I don't care. People say, well, when you go to a game, what do you want? I want the game to be over so I can go home, and I want something to happen that I can write about. And most of the sports writers I know were that way.
I think one of the things that will always stay in my memory is the wall that heals.
Right.
I'm a big God country
Right.
kind of person, and so I remember being on the road, welcoming it in when it
Right.
came in, and cheering and things, and then actually going over there, and it was it was both sad and encouraging at the same time of the commitment that happened, and hearing that many of the vets would come during the middle of the night because they did not want to be recognized and things. You spoke to the Rotary, and I think even before the wall came, I was so excited that that was coming, and what that meant to our town, to be one of few chosen with the replica that came out. But it was massive. I mean, you think when you first hear about it, it's going to be a small thing. And then when you walk that wall, it's amazing. So I want to thank you from someone who is in Garner, who served his country, and that was something that I could be proud of and tell people that I live in Garner and this is what we thought was important.
That came about. I wrote a play. I started writing these plays, and I wrote a play about Garner in Vietnam.
Right.
And so I did a lot. I think we had 9 young men killed in Vietnam. And so I researched all of those. And in the research, I found out about the wall that heals. And so, we investigated and we got it. It took us 3 years. With the first year, it was COVID. And then the second year, it was still COVID. And we got to do it the third year. Having the wall here was just one of the most amazing things. And as soon as it's over, you wish you'd done it better. I wish I'd got more people to come see it. The wall is sort of what you make of it. You can say, oh, it's just a big black wall and go home. Okay. Or you can think of each one of those names not only represents a person who gave his life or her life. There's 7 women listed, but it represents a grieving family.
Exactly.
And a grieving community, and it kind of hits you the price that's paid, and what went on, and then you start finding out the stories. Garner had 4 of our boys earned Silver Stars, which is the 3rd highest military award you can get. And it was just, what is it about our community that we produced men who would be that self-sacrificing, who would lay down their lives, because each one of them made a deliberate act that put their lives in danger, and they knew it. It wasn't like it just suddenly happened. No, Harold Teal stood up and advanced on a machine gun nest. And Phil Fleming attacked a machine gun nest trying to get injured people out. And it's just kind of amazing to think of the courage they showed, and really spent a lot of time. What was it about our community?
Um, there's so many things that you have either in the hopper or that's just
Right.
come out. What's one thing that would connect someone that would be watching and either has hesitated to get involved or I'm too busy? But there's all kinds of things that people can get involved with. What's one thing that you would say from your perspective that would be a way for someone to get involved in their community?
My wife and I have discussed why I'm so weird. And I think because I try different things. I started making documentaries, and we just finished one on PTSD. Uh, we had 7,000 people killed in the global war on terror, and we've had about 35,000 of those veterans to take their own lives.
Hmm.
And so we did a documentary on that. But anyway, my wife and I, we were talking why, and I think it's not being afraid of failing. It's like I tell people, I'm a creative person. I have many ideas, some of which are good, many of which are not. And so I have many more failures than I do successes trying to do things.
So that could be related to someone who tries something as a volunteer and it really is not the fit. It
Correct.
doesn't mean that you're not a good volunteer. It means that maybe that's not your fit in that one specific thing. And I think that may be the problem sometimes is we hold back to that perfect thing that we would volunteer with, and the idea is that you get involved and then you start realizing what it is. They may have all kinds of great ideas. This is where I think I would do great as a volunteer, and it turns out not to be so great. But then the willingness to say, but let me try this. It's totally different, things like that.
I've done
Perfect.
many things,
Right.
and some of them work out great, and some of them don't. Uh, uh, One of the things that worked out well is that we started a concert series. We brought in Broadway.
That was a big thing for
and that
Garner.
was really good. And that we kind of got had by COVID, and it kind of lost there. And who knew if that was going to work? Well, we tried it and it worked. Some other things I've tried, they didn't work. But it's just, well, I'll try something else and try new things, think outside the box. Be willing to be committed, to have a passion about something. And when I say some things don't work, it doesn't mean I wasn't passionate and didn't try my hardest. It means it just didn't work. And it may have worked some other time, but it didn't work that time.
That's incredible. This has been an incredible time for me to even learn more about all that's going on. I can read a lot about you, but it's to hear the passion that you have for the things that you brought out, recognizing needs that need to be, whether it's the community to be aware or whether the community needs to take action. You've stepped up into that. So that brings us to the end of another episode of The Serving Effect. Whether you're weird like Tim and you love to serve, or you just need a spark to get you in the act of serving, let me encourage you to begin today, to begin finding somewhere that you can serve. And remember, the thing that you may offer the most in your service would be showing up for someone. I'm Carlton, this is Tim, and this is The Serving Effect. I want to take this opportunity to thank Smith Addressing and Machine Service for hosting the location where we do our podcast, The Serving Effect, and to our sponsors, the morning and the midday Rotary Clubs of Garner. We want to thank you for giving us this opportunity to share in this podcast of how people can get involved in their community and make a difference in the lives of others.